This is Listen at Your Own Risk, the podcast series that explores today's most interesting questions of risk and actuarial practice. Thought-provoking discussions led by host Andy Ferris, offering insight into the innovative work actuaries are doing to solve critical challenges that face the world.
Hello, listeners. This is Andy Ferris. Welcome back to this edition of our Listen at Your Own Risk podcast series here at the Society of Actuaries. Our special guest today is Dean Connor. Dean is a fellow, currently holds the roles of both president and CEO of Sun Life. In fact, Dean was recently named Canada's Outstanding CEO of the Year for calendar year 2017, subsequently named Ivey's Business Leader of the Year for calendar year 2018. And so we're thrilled today to hear from Dean about the success that he's had in his career. We're particularly interested in hearing Dean's perspective and how his training, his experience have enabled him to achieve the executive level of success that he's had in his career. And so, Dean Connor, welcome to the show. Thanks for joining us today.
Thanks, Andy. Glad to be with you.
Dean, if I may, I'll just begin by asking you, could you just briefly describe for our listeners a bit about your background and the role that you're in today?
Sure. I started my career at Mercer as a pension consulting assistant, and I wrote all my exams while I was working at Mercer and kind of worked my way up on the pension side things as a pension actuary. And then I switched to the investment consulting practice for several years. And then I switched to the group benefits practice, did a lot of work in flex benefits plans over the years. And as part of that, had a sort of parallel and growing series of leadership roles within the firm that culminated in moving to New York in 2004 to run Mercer's businesses across the Americas, so the United States, Latin America, and Canada. And then in 2006, I left Mercer and joined Sun Life Financial, and I've had a series of roles and became the chief executive officer about 6.5 years ago. And today, I have the privilege of leading this fantastic organization, $2 billion market cap. We operate in 26 countries around the world, 34,000 people and over 100,000 advisors. Manage nearly $1 trillion of assets on behalf of our clients across life insurance, health insurance, group benefits, group pensions, investment management around the world. So in a nutshell, that's my career.
Dean, fascinating. What if I were to just ask you, as you were moving through your career, as you were taking on some of those leadership roles that you just described, what are maybe some of the challenges that you faced? What did some of your training, your experience as an actuary help you to overcome some of those challenges?
Andy, I'll break that into two pieces. There's kind of the set of challenges, knowledge and technical skills, and then a set of challenges around development. On the knowledge and technical side, moving from pension consulting into the investment side of the business, and this was a long time ago. So, the attribution analysis and ALM and investor manager service. So nascent at the time, and so it was interesting because we had to build a lot of those things and models from scratch. And I think my actuarial background, helped me do that. These were challenges because you never knew if you were doing the right thing, and you had to iterate around it. So, and the same with group benefits. When I moved into group benefits, I was doing a lot of flex benefits work and pricing models. Flex were nascent back then, and so we had to build a lot of those tools. So I think my training as an actuary helped me step into these new roles and kind of create some thinking tools from scratch. On the leadership side, lots of challenges along the way in learning new ways to lead ever larger groups of people and realizing that I couldn't do it all myself and I had to lead through others.
Dean, great stories. Great to hear that. What if I were to ask, say, what are some of the key skills, let's say interpersonal work, otherwise, that have been essential in your own mind to your career success?
I would say communication skills are really important. And that is a big category. It's not just how you speak and how you present points, but how you listen. And how you listen, I've said to people, you got to listen so hard, your head hurts at the end of this meeting. You're trying to process, you're trying to listen, you're trying to understand the motives, the emotions of the person on the other side of the table. And then when you're expressing your views, you have to be, obviously, you got to have points incredibly well organized in your head to be able to express them simply. And also the choice of words. I've learned over time that, getting the right words really matters. And, I'll give you an example. The language of performance that we use now in Sun Life is hits and misses, not successes and failures, hits and misses. What I've learned is just those two words have unleashed the conversation around performance that is less judgment. And because, even the best batters in the major league only bat 350, and it allows a completely different conversation. It's an example of my point around, picking your words carefully. So communication is one. I would say another key skill is this notion around detail versus big picture. And as actuaries and as business leaders, you must get into the detail in certain places because, this detail that kills you in risk, for example. On the other hand, the business is so complex that the trick here's the skill, is to figure out when to go deep on an issue, figure out what's going on, and then get back to the surface so you can look across issues as fast as you can. That's a whole skill set. It's kind of like somebody described it to me as a dolphin skill set. You kind of move along the surface of the water, then you sense there's a big fish there, and you dive down, you get it, and you come back up. Those are 2 points. A lot more to that, but I'd say communication, and then this balance between the big picture and diving deep into the detail.
Sure, that's great. Very helpful in understanding those key skills. Gene, if I were just to ask, say, some of the challenges maybe you've had to overcome, and I'm thinking particularly here in your executive roles through your career, what have been some of those?
I found early in my career that I wasn't critical to choosing the problem. And I distinguish that from analytical skills, because as actuaries, we're really well trained to analyze problems, to break them apart, to turn the numbers around, and to really try to figure out what's going on. Distinct from that is critical thinking, which is kind of standing back from a problem, thinking about it in ways that you haven't thought about it before, challenging things that are presented as gospel, challenging them from first principles. And I was really fortunate that, midway in my career, I got to work with some other actuaries who were exceptional at that. And I would do work, and I'd bring it to them, and we'd talk about it, and they would challenge my critical thinking around it. Not the technical side of it, but looking at the problem from different angles. So that was one kind of aha moment for me in my career. On a more personal note, on leadership style, at one moment I went through, and we all do this, you go through a 360 and a psychological test and all that. And I remember the feedback came back and said, you're too darn even-keeled. People want to know where you stand. People want to know when do you get mad about something because you're too darn even-keeled. And that, I'd actually prided myself on not, losing my temper or stuff like that. So that was great input to me. And then after that, I did lose my temper every now and then. Not that often, but, you reserve, you show people when you're upset about something, show them when you're delighted about something. I just put a little bit more of myself out there than I had before. Those were two kind of challenges. And what What's interesting about both of those examples is I didn't solve them on my own. I had people around me kind of coaching me, giving me some input, and I was listening to that input. I really wanted to do something about it.
Dean, fascinating to hear your example perspective on career path and some of the aspects of your career that have enabled the success that you've been able to achieve. I'd like to transition maybe just to ask a few questions here about our industry, the insurance industry, some of the aspects that are rapidly today. And I'll begin first, maybe just a broad question. If I were to just ask, what are some of the, let's say, most strategic challenges that your organization faces today? How might your actuarial background give you a particular insight into how you might go about addressing some of those most strategic challenges?
The first I'll talk about, Andy, is well familiar to all of us is low interest rates. And, you know, the history of the life insurance industry, and by the way, if you're in this industry, you must study the history to figure out what's gone well and what's gone wrong. And there are lots of examples of where things have not gone well. But there's they fall into two main buckets. One is low interest rates that surprised people. And second is illiquidity. So, you know, some of the demises of insurance companies have happened when they had a liquidity event and they were overinvested in illiquid assets like real estate. But low interest rates are a challenge for the industry. They're a challenge for balance sheets. They're a challenge for products. They're a challenge to anticipate. And I would say, you know, my actuarial training, which gets you to think about interest rates over long periods of time, took me in a direction that said, we can't predict whether interest rates are going to go up or down. And there was in Sun Life a very strong bias among actuaries that rates would revert to the mean. And so, okay, we don't hedge this match risk today because don't worry, rates will revert to the mean. And I think my training, having looked back over many years, I said, you know, I don't know if that's true. I don't know how you can know that. And I think we actually have to plan for war and pray for peace. And that's what we did. So we changed our business mix. We sold our variable annuity business in the United States. We stopped selling life insurance in the U.S. We doubled down on group benefits in the U.S., which is obviously less sensitive to interest rates. We tripled down in Asia, which the products in Asia are less sensitive to interest rates. We basically said, you know, we can't predict where we don't want people buying our stock based on their take on what's going to happen to interest rates. So let's make this company less sensitive to interest rates. And I have to say, I think studying, you know, the actuarial profession and the study of the history of the industry over time gave me a sense of humility, if I can put it that way, about my ability or our ability to predict the direction of interest rates. So that's one big challenge. The second big challenge, I'd say, relates to underwriting. In a world of rapidly changing medical care, biotech, health diagnosis, genomics, and rapidly changing societal views on what's acceptable. So, for example, here in Canada, a bill was passed to say that even if you had a genetic test, you did not have to share the results of that with an insurance company as part of the underwriting process. So somebody could, for example, find out that they're carrying the Huntington's gene, and they do not have to share that with us in the underwriting process. So these are obviously significant challenges. I don't have answers for all of them. We don't have answers for all of them. But I would say that actuarial training gives you a framework, a mindset to start to think about these issues and to try to find solutions. So those are a couple of the challenges. I could regale you with a longer list, but I'll stop there for now.
Well understood, Dean. No, just fascinating to hear some of those, as you described them, very strategic considerations. What if I were to move to, let's say, some of the digital technologies that are transforming the insurance industry today? What role does predictive analytics, artificial intelligence, cognitive techniques, etc., play in our industry and in our profession today?
Well, I think this is going to have a tremendous impact on the industry, all industries actually, for decades and decades to come. Here at Sun Life, let me give you a few examples of the things that we're doing that are having a real impact. So, for example, in our group benefits, pension program, we cover 6 million Canadians through these group worksite platforms. And we have built something called the Digital Benefits Assistant, which is personified by Ella. Ella, she's our bot. She's the face of Sun Life to plan members. And Ella shows up with, right now we've rolled out about 100 nudges, we call them, which look at data, your own personal data, and using predictive modeling and saying, hey, Andy, congratulations on the birth of your child. We see that in the data. And this is a time where you should have a look at your life insurance, and your employer provides a great coverage, and in the next 30 days you can sign up with no medical or modified short form. So that kind of personalized, predictive, proactive outreach to help plan members get the most from their benefits plan. And I would say these nudges we've rolled out had a real positive impact on the engagement plan members. They say, gee, Sun Life, you got our back. Like, you're helping us. You're helping me think about my benefits. And of course, ultimately, they're generating more business for us. And the employers, it's interesting how that's changed. 10 years ago, I think many HR leaders would have said, don't you dare, ping my employees and start nudging them with Ella. Today, they're saying, provided you're respectful of the data, you treat the data properly, provided you don't harass my people, good for you, because we don't have the bandwidth in HR to do that. So you need to help my people, get proper coverage, sign up for 401k and pensions, good for you. So that's one whole category. And, our next step is we're taking that model, personalized, predictive, proactive, we're taking that over to the retail space to complement how our advisors work with clients. And then ultimately, those models, which are algorithmically driven today with predictive modeling behind them, will become AI driven. So they will become, we'll put deep learning into those models, and they will be less algorithm or real time learning models. So that's one whole category, and I think that's our promise, our purpose, the reason we're in business is to help our clients achieve lifetime financial security and live healthier lives. And we cannot achieve that if we're not actually engaging with them and nudging them and helping them figure out what they need to do. So that's one whole category. There's another category where we built out models around fraud detection. And think of the disability business. So, in North America, there's about 100,000 people in the United States and Canada receiving a monthly disability income from Sun Life. The vast majority of them are desperate to get their lives back and are working, get back to work, and we're helping them do that. There's a minority who are fraudsters, and many of them, some of them will have actually gone back to work and are still collecting disability income. So we have built and rolled out using AI, a model that looks at data from all kinds of sources, including unstructured data, including data we never even used before. We built a dynamic learning model, and it is working. It is finding people who go to work and are still collecting disability income. Our claims examiners said, never in a million years we have found those people. So those are two areas, kind of direct, personalized, proactive, and then fraud detection. There's also a lot of work underway in the investment side. So, we manage just $1 trillion of our clients' assets, and we are building more predictive models. I would say it's very early days in that area. We're building more predictive models to try to look for, new sources of data, new opportunities to make better investment decisions. There is a whole other category, by the way, of question around data and data governance that we're spending a lot of time on in Sun Life to talk to clients about how we're treating their data. And I don't mean from a cyber protection, I mean using the data for them, not against them. So I'll stop there.
Dean, great to hear how some of those kind of cognitive techniques are really truly helping your organization and what I would call, my words, not yours, kind of true core heart of the business operations. A question for you around that, really kind of around, my sense is, organizational silos tend to be a challenge for insurance companies, and I offer that perspective. After having been in this industry for over 20 years, my question is particularly around the data, the predictive analytics, the cognitive techniques. What's worked for you folks to bridge some of those gaps and/or challenges around those I'll call them traditional organizational silos, if that makes sense?
Andy, that's a great question. And I'll share an anecdote. We, a number of 7 years ago, we started to think about building this business to go straight to direct to the plan members, these 6 million Canadians, and we thought, when people are leaving their company, they're retiring or leaving, we thought we already did pension rollover conversations, and that those were going well. We thought, well, maybe they'd like to convert their life insurance, their company life insurance, to a personal plan, or their health coverage, a COBRA conversation in the U.S., or just a conversion here in Canada. And it's interesting. Somebody said to me, well, we already looked at that idea 5 years ago, and in fact, we have a PowerPoint deck on that. I said, oh, really? Show it to me. So I looked at it, and it was the idea. They'd already come up with the idea. And I said, well, it's a great idea. How come you didn't do it? And they said, well, we were worried about channel conflict with the sales force, that some of these leads go to them today, and if we went direct, that would. So it's really to your question around, there's so many thoughtful, creative people in organizations, and usually it's the organization that gets in the way of unleashing that creativity and innovation. So the way we've been tackling this at Sun Life is, when we see an opportunity, we lift people out of their day-to-day jobs. So in this example, we took a team of about 25 people out of the group benefits and group pensions business back then. We set them up as a separate business, a separate P&L. And we said, your job is to build out the connectivity to 6 million plan members and start, through the phone, and that's led today to the digital connection, but start contacting these people and see if we can do more for them. Similarly, we started a pension risk transfer business, and we did the same thing. We took a group of people, mostly actuaries, out of our group pensions business and set it up as a separate P&L and said, go forth and multiply. So we want you guys to become amazingly good and knowledgeable about longevity and study everything around the world, best ideas on mortality improvement. And then we've most recently done that again with the new thing called digital health. So our model, it doesn't work for everybody. Our model is to take these teams of people. The reason it works at Sun Life is the culture, the nub of the culture in this company is around collaboration. And this model for us wouldn't work if we didn't have collaboration, back with the businesses, because, as an example, we say to the guy who runs the group benefits business, good news, we're going to start pinging your plan members and talk to them about more things. In many organizations, that business would say, don't you dare do that, because I might get an angry call from a VP of HR, the client who hires and fires us on the benefits of the pensions program. We have figured out how to make that work and how to make that collaboration work across Sun Life. So org model, culture, and The other thing I would add, at the end of the day, it does take somebody at the top to drive it, because so many organizations, especially larger ones, there's a lot of inertia, and people need to have courage to take decisions that may or may not work. That's a subject we could come back to, but courage, organizational courage, is hugely important as well.
Dean, excellent. How about maybe a couple set of questions, final kind of broad topic, I'll call it, around perhaps your advice for, let's say, actuaries kind of seeking management roles, executive roles as such. Maybe I'll begin with the first question in this kind of topic, just by asking you, what advice might you have for, let's say, actuaries who seek C-suite or other types of executive positions or roles?
Andy, the first thing I'd say is getting close to clients is really important. I understand, I'll start that over. Andy, the first thing I'd say is getting close to clients is really important. I still shadow calls in our call center once a quarter, and every time I do that, I get insights, new gleanings, new ideas from just listening to our clients. A lot of risk, pretty well all risk comes from products. Understanding how clients engage with those products, whether they lapse them, whether they keep them, how they select against, understanding clients is really, really, really important. So I would just say, advice to actuaries, make sure you find a way to get close to clients. If you could spend some time in a sales role, that's a great part of your career and a great stepping stone. Second thing I would say is, if you can, work outside your home country at some point. I moved from Canada to the United States, worked and lived in New York. One of the richest times of my life. In hindsight, I wish I had done it sooner in my career. I did it when I was in my mid-40s. But getting some experience outside of your home country, you just get a whole different perspective on how people think, products, how business is conducted. And this is a special message to Canadian actuaries listening. Go work in the U.S. for a while. There's a clock speed goes way faster than the Canadian business world. And I came back from the U.S. with my clock speed, ramped up, and it's helped me in my career. I would say, I talked earlier about communication skills, and I can't overestimate the importance of those. Those are really important to develop, and you can work on those and build them. Another piece of advice that I would give is you do have to take some risk. You do have to take some risk in your career. I was asked to start an office in 1989 in Mercer, in a satellite office that nobody else seemed to want to do it, because you were leaving the mothership in downtown Toronto, where all the senior actuaries and consultants were, and you're going to go off to this satellite community. But I did it, and I learned a lot, and I took that risk. It was fun. We had a riot. We built a great business there, but it was a risk. I took a risk moving from pensions into investments, and then investments into group benefits, because frankly, I didn't know a lot about group benefits at the time, and I had to make a big investment on the learning curve. I took a risk moving to New York. I had like 48 hours to make that decision on whether to take that job, and I took that risk, and I was really glad, as I said, that I did that. So you got to take some risks with your career. And the other thing I would say is, if along your way you can get P&L experience, if you aspire to a senior leadership role, if you can get some P&L experience along the way, that's hugely valuable. So let me stop there, and hopefully people find some of those pieces of advice helpful.
Dean, they certainly will. Our listeners will love all of those topics. And I have so many reactions to some of the words you used. You mentioned clock speed. Agreed. Sometimes it's too high, perhaps unhealthy. Here in the U.S., you mentioned courage. would love to dive into that topic as well. Also want to be respectful of the time that we have together today, and appreciate that it's kind of nearing an end. Maybe I'll just finish with just one more question for you today, Dean. And that's really kind of what types of strengths or characteristics do you folks seek as you hire executive level actuaries?
As we look at executive level actuaries, both hiring and promoting within, we look at a number of characteristics. Obviously, there's this sort of core set of character elements. So, high integrity, collaborative, respectful of other people, treating people with dignity and respect. So those are kind of just table stakes. There's a couple of things that distinguish people, though, that I find. One is the natural curiosity around how things work, a natural curiosity about learning new things. And it's amazing to me how some people, they start out in the morning and they say, you know what, I could learn just about anything if I tried hard enough. I could learn about fast radio bursts in the cosmos and what's causing those, that source of electromagnetic radiation. I could learn about that if I wanted to spend the time doing that. And we look for people like that, people who say, I don't understand pharmacogenomics and what the impact is on pricing of group benefits, or how we can use that to, help somebody with mental illness get the right prescription. But let's learn about that. Let's read stuff on that. Let's figure that out. So natural curiosity on how things work. Another dimension is getting things done. And it's amazing to me, you can have two people, equally bright, equally driven, equally motivated, and yet one person is able to get so much more done. Why is that? Well, and these are things you can learn. You look over their shoulder and you see how they go about their work. They take big, complex problems and they break them into smaller, more digestible pieces. They take big problems and they spread them out over time and say, I don't have to solve this whole thing this year, but if I get this first piece done this year, then that'll set me up to do the next piece. They work with teams. They figure out how to enlist other people to help them not just get the best ideas, but to knock down barriers or to get around barriers. So there's a whole set of tools around how do you get things done. And then the last thing I would say is back to this point around, this putting the needle between being able to dive deep on detail and then come up to the surface and kind of see the big picture. It's kind of like you're not an inch wide and a mile deep, and you're not an inch deep and a mile wide. You're dynamic, and you're able to go deep on some things, get back up to the surface quickly, go across the surface when you need to. So those are some features that we look for as we're hiring, but also promoting senior actuaries within Sun Life.
Dean, thank you for all of this. Your perspectives, your advice are just excellent. Will certainly make an impact in helping all of our listeners really where they may be in their professional journey. Thank you again for joining us today.
Andy, it's been a great pleasure. Thank you.